Hi there, it's Catching from 3Ps. This video is a run through the top books I think that inspire you to lift weights, and I'm going to base this on my own journey and the books that really inspired me to lift weights. So I've just gone through my library. I have a lot of books here. I'm a real weights geek, and I've read almost everything I could ever find on weights. But this is my top pick of the best books I think that really get you fired up to lift, or I think are technically very good. So the first book I'm going to start with, because it's the one that really inspired me, sorry I have to put glasses on to read, is this one, The King, the Man. Okay, this book is called The Education of a Bodybuilder, Arnold. It was written by Arnold Schwarzenegger with Douglas Kent Hall. I suspect that when it was written, English would have been a bit dodgy, so he needed someone to some extent to translate. Now, what I like about this book is, first of all, because it's got amazing photography. It's got original photos right from his early days to his first ever championship. So you get a real sense of how he's progressed. But I also like it because he's very honest about his journey. He's very honest about how he started training. There's some great stories in this. There's a fantastic story about when he went to his first Mr. Universe contest, which was held I think it was in either London or Paris, I think it was, and he didn't speak the language, and got there and he was really nervous, and eventually he got in a cab from the airport, and he went to the wrong hotel, and of course didn't realise that he got there, he was in the wrong place, and I can imagine how scary that must have been. So he was very nervous, he was in the wrong place, and the competition was due to start, and he managed to find another cab that took him to the right place. And when he got there were all these bodybuilders hanging around outside, and he's thinking, what are they hanging around for? He didn't realise they were hanging around for him, because the rumour had gone round that there was this absolutely massive Austrian who was coming in to compete, and of course that was him. And so at that time he was so young, so naive, he just didn't know. And he said that the funny thing is that a number of the bodybuilders in those days used to actually put rods in the back of their jackets to widen their shoulders. It was all the mind games. It was probably the first education of him about mind games. And if you've read anything about Schwarzenegger, you know that he became the king of mind games. So he was the king of how to psych out his competition pre-contest. So I just think it's a really fantastic book. And if I ever get sort of in any way needing a sort of a boost or wanting to get back to basics, I will go back to this book again and I'll read it, because I just think it's absolutely fantastic. So in it you've got, he does, and there it is, obviously these are his photographs. These are not great, these are not poshly shot. These are shot in the gym. There's some great ones. Let me just see here. Look, so this is in the original. This is the Gold's Gym in California. This is him doing leg day. It's a really brilliant basic guide. He talks about something that I really believe in, which is the idea that you start with basics, you get your basics right, your foundation right, and you move on from that. So in his world, you would spend at least 6 months just doing bodyweight exercise before you even went near a hand weight. So he really does believe that you start slow and you build up. And one of the things that I said when we were looking at weights in leg week was how important, from my perspective, legs are, because it's as if you're building a house and legs are your foundation. And I think Arnold and I would agree on that one, that you have to be systematic in your training, and you have to be exacting in your training, and that's very much what this book is about. So this one, and you can get this, it's still in print. As I said, it's called Arnold, The Education of a Bodybuilder. This is your classic text, I think, whether you're male or female. So that's the first one. And then the next one I wanted to mention is actually written by a guy who's from Sardinia, so in Spain, who was Arnold Schwarzenegger's training partner for many years. They trained together in Munich, and then when Arnold went to America and he was really unhappy and he was really homesick, he persuaded Joe Weider of Weider Fitness, who had sponsored him into America, to bring over his training partner from Munich. And this is this guy called Franco Columbu. And Franco Columbu became Mr. Universe as well. He was as good as Arnold. He was a different physique though, because he wasn't as tall as Arnold. He was much shorter. I actually think, in terms of his face and his upper body, he was more beautiful than Arnold, but he didn't have the statuesque. He wasn't born with the height and the range that Arnold had. which, you know, that's the true of us when any of us are lifting. One of the things you've got to accept about yourself is you have a certain frame and you can work with that frame, but you can't, for example, go from 5'1" to 5'10", and you can't go from being an ectomorph or an endomorph, or you can't go from being naturally heavily muscled to being skinny, or probably vice versa. So if you've got to understand where you're coming from. And think about this guy, Franco Columbu he was completely from body type, but he and Arnold trained together for years. So the book I like is called the Bodybuilder's Nutrition Book, and it's by Dr. Franco Columbu, and this is him. Now, when he finished lifting competitively, he became a nutritionist. And what I really like about this book is I think it's a very sensible guide to nutrition by someone who really does know his stuff. You know, this is not someone who's messing about. He's competed at the absolute top level, and he talks about the essential place that food has in your diet. So it cannot all be powders and bars and shakes and supplements. It's about real food, and I absolutely agree with that approach. I think it is a nonsense, the idea that you're going to build a body that looks great if it's unhealthy underneath, because you may look great and you feel terrible. I am in various of my businesses, I'm in a study group with a number of people, one of whom is a guy who's a physique, he competes in physique contests, and he admitted this year that his diet had made him feel ill, his diet had made him feel exhausted, and that's because he was basically, he was taking his diet so low in terms of fat and calories, and then he was souping himself up with caffeine to get himself through his workouts, and the result was it was like he was revving his engine with no gas there, and he just felt terrible. This guy is in his mid-20s and he felt terrible, and I thought, this is insane. And Franco Columbu, this guy, would totally disagree with that. So, for example, he says that before you train, on the way to the gym, eat a piece of fruit, because what you want when you start training is simple sugar. What you don't want, actually, for once, is any complex carb. You want simple carbohydrate to get that energy into your system. And he says, eat a bunch of grapes on your way to the gym. Really fantastic, sensible advice from a guy that I really rate. I don't know if there's any pictures in here of him. No, I'm just looking. Oh, yes, there is. Like, here's one of him. So you get a sense of how different his physique is from Arnold's. But I think, you know, a really natural, fantastic-looking bodybuilder, as I said, who did win Mr. Universe himself. So that's my second book I found really inspirational from a nutrition perspective. It started me off with the idea that nutrition, as a bodybuilder, it's about health. That's what it's meant to be about. So that's the second book. Now the third book is quite a heavy one, and it's called Joe Weider's Ultimate Bodybuilding. So Joe Weider was one of the founders of modern bodybuilding. He was the one that brought Arnold Schwarzenegger over. He was the star spotter for a lot of the great bodybuilders, and he had a number of bodybuilding magazines. But this is the main book. It's a big, thick one. And the reason I like it is because of the photography and the actual encyclopedic nature of the exercise in here. So it's got every classic weights exercise, and they're grouped obviously by body parts. So you've got there's chapter on shoulders, chapter on legs, chapter on back, chapter on chest, chapter on abs. And he also talks about some of the more advanced techniques that you might use as a bodybuilder. So the idea of doing negatives, the idea of ascending sets, drop sets, all this stuff that if you're an experienced bodybuilder, you will know about. But when you're starting out and you're thirsty for knowledge, you don't really know where to start. And this is a really good, I've said, it's a really good introduction to different bodybuilding techniques and basic exercises per part of your body. So I still look at this now, particularly if I'm looking to combine. I do, as if you subscribe, you'll know I do a lot of supersetting, because I think it's really good for getting your intensity up without having to go too heavy, and it also saves time. And I'm often under time pressure in the gym, and I need to get in and out. So supersetting allows me to get the volume in and do it quickly. And I go back to Joe Weider's book if I'm looking to create new supersets. So to put basic exercise together, because I like to superset, tri-set, multi-set, maxi-set, whatever, however many I put together. But I obviously need the basic exercise to put together. So I use Joe Weider's book for that. So that's my third book that I really liked. And then the next one I wanted to mention only because I actually use kettlebells quite a lot in my training, and I have done some kettlebell exercises as part of my supersetting on this channel. So if you want to search and you just search kettlebell, I think at least a couple of exercises will come up. And I use kettlebells particularly for shoulders, so I use them for all over my shoulders, and I use them for the rear delt as well. And this book is the king, the tome, the Bible of kettlebell training, and it's called Enter the Kettlebell: Strength Secret of the Soviet Supermen, and it's by a guy called Pavel. Okay, a lot of body hair going on there, but this guy Pavel is the acknowledged authority on kettlebells. When I was doing my personal training qualifications, and we did a whole section on kettlebells, and this was the only book that we referred to. It's got some, it's got all the basic exercises in there. It's got a good explanation of how you progressively strengthen your body using kettlebells. The thing about kettlebells is they are deceptive because you don't realize how hard they are until you use them. It's got some really good exercises in here that you can add to your training routine. I use kettlebells near the end of my weight training routine if I'm going to use them, because I find the movements tend to unify the work I've done. So where I've done a lot of isolation exercises, for example, so a lot of front delt, mid delt, rear delt, I would use kettlebell at the end to round my exercises out. There's on this channel there is an exercise I have filmed, which is a kettlebell snatch, where you snatch the kettlebell into this position and you push it up above your head, then you bring it down, and you do that repeatedly. And I tend to do 15 on each side in 4 sets. That is how I burn my shoulders before I finish. So kettlebell is a really, really good exercise to include as part of weight training. Also, I would say, if you've got a really packed gym, which often you will have, particularly at the start of the year, and you can't get anywhere near the weights machines, you need to make sure you've got other irons in the fire in terms of what you can do. And if you know how to use a kettlebell, and there usually are kettlebells there, then at least you can train with those. So it's a good way to make sure that you've got other things you can be doing if you can't get on the equipment you want. So, as I said, let me just show you one more time. It's called Enter the Kettlebell: Strength Secrets of the Soviet Supermen, and it's by Pavel. And, he's the guy, if he could just call himself Pavel. I'll just see if there are any good pictures of him. Yeah. So look, basically, I think it's hilarious. He's wearing what appear to be almost like office trousers. I mean, there's no allowance made for glamour in this at all. He's just wearing Soviet type clothing, but the exercises are fantastic in that book. Okay, so that's my kettlebell book, and the very last book that I'm going to show you is because I have a real soft spot for it. As I said, I'm a real weights geek, and I love and I have read virtually everything that's been published on weights and bodybuilding, and this book I found, and it's a very old one, and I'm just going to show you the cover first because it's just a classic cover. It's female bodybuilding. It's actually called Super Pump with an exclamation mark, Hardcore Women's Bodybuilding. Now when I saw the title I was like, thank God for that, because it's very difficult to find books that are about hardcore female bodybuilding. You get books about female physique, which means, as far as I'm concerned, any female bodybuilding which requires a woman to pose in heels does not, in my view, count as a sport. And that's me being maybe very prejudiced, but I personally don't do a sport to pose around on a stage in a pair of high heels. Okay, I have a job, which I and a profession and several businesses, and that's not my high. But my high point is neither putting a wedding dress on or wearing high heels to walk around on a stage. That, I think, is demeaning. If you are a sportsman, you should be able to pose the same as men in bare feet. And the thing about hardcore training is that's exactly what women do. But anyway, to get back to this book, I love the fact that it actually had the word hardcore and women in the same title. Very, very difficult to find. But also, let me show it to you now. Just this is the fantastic. This is the cover. Okay, there's an awful lot of fake tan and oil going on here. What's quite interesting is this woman on here. This woman is called Gloria. Now this woman became Jean-Claude Van Damme's wife. So he met her on a shoot and fell in love with her, and they married, and they had one child together. And then, of course, when he made it big, he went off with Miss Hawaiian Tropic. He actually did run off with another woman and she was Miss Hawaiian Tropic. That did not last, and amazingly, they got back together again. So he's now back with her, and I think what I would say about her, and probably in common with a lot of women who bodybuild, is you have to be a grafter to bodybuild, male or female. And so you're the sort of person who actually probably has your head screwed on quite well. And so you are one of those sort of, steady, reliable people. I mean, maybe I'm just trying to right the reputation that we wrongly have for being stupid meatheads, which we're not. What we are is very focused, hardworking, and we look at the long term, because bodybuilding takes years to get to. So Gloria, who, her man did her wrong, Jean-Claude Van Damme, but he ended up going back to her, and they've stayed together ever since. So this book is called Super Pump, Hardcore Women's Bodybuilding. But what I really like, if you go inside, you've got, these are all, obviously there's no classic one on the back. It is very 80s to look at, but what I like is inside it has profiles of real competitive bodybuilders from that period, but it talks about their training schedules. It shows them, here's a great picture here of a woman squatting, yeah. So it's very inspirational. If you're a woman, it's a really inspirational book, because it shows women, it doesn't just show them tiny, it shows some of them are quite heavily muscled. So, for a woman who maybe is in two minds about whether they want to bodybuild, maybe worried about, what would happen if they got really big, it's quite a good book for showing that what you end up doing is getting curves, and they can be heavily muscled if you work for it. And you can decide how far you want to take it. I personally don't have any problem with developing muscle, because actually I think muscle is beautiful, and I think that muscle on women, you get the most amazing curves. And so I think this book is really inspirational for me. So those are my books that I use. I'd be very interested if you have particular books that inspire you. Just let's see if we can actually try and build up a list, and I'll put it on the website. So if you leave me a comment at the bottom of this video, just to let me know what you think of these books, what you think of the video, so you can do that or that if you want to. And also any books that you have inspired you. You can also post a comment on our Facebook page. We're at facebook.com/3Ps Media. Please do subscribe. It'd be a pleasure to have you. I know it's a privilege. You're busy people, but it's a pleasure to be able to come and bring you videos about fitness. Also share this video if you've got people that you know who might be interested in weightlifting or weight training. As I said, if you go onto our website, if you can also find our website, which is at www.3pspublishing.com. There are a couple of free book giveaways on that site at the moment. So if you go on there, you can see there's one book which is called Alcohol-Free Drinks, which clearly does what it says on the pack. So it's about what to drink when you're not drinking, which if you are bodybuilding and it's about health, hopefully, then maybe you are thinking about either not drinking or certainly having alcohol-free days, and it'll give you some ideas about what you can drink. The other book on there is actually the first in a new series we're about to publish, which we've had written. We've had a nutritionist, a specialist in weight loss, work with us to create a series for us, and the series has got all the series are called Eating Clean But Keep It Lean. So they're about eating healthily but shredding or leaning up. So they're a diet but with health. The first one on the website, which is free to download, is called Sweet Treat. So it's about what you can, if you've got a sweet tooth, what you can eat. If you want to be super lean, or you're shredding up for competition, or just generally for the summer, what sweet you can eat. So it's got recipes in there which are very simple but good things that you could have. There'll be a whole series coming out in about the next 10 days or so, and I'll let you know about those. And I'm really excited about them because they are fantastic. And having tried a lot of the recipes, the food is great, but it will get you super, super lean. So I'll let you know about that. So I hope to see you soon. Thanks so much for your time. It's always a pleasure. I'm in my office, not in my gym today, but I'll see you in the gym tomorrow. Bye.